There we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 9 of Cracking Open a Cold One. I'm your host, Doug Graves, with the Friendly Neighborhood Necromancer, and joining me again is Houngan Matt from the Dark Lady of Nola. Hello. Where did you want to start off with this? Because I know this is kind of like part 2 of the previous episode that we did, but I kind of wanted to concentrate more about like magic and sorcery and how that's kind of worked out in voodoo. But I mean,
which by itself is a really big topic. Where do you want to start? I mean,
like I suppose. Okay, how about we start like how is magic and sorcery seen in voodoo? Like how is that I don't know
I mean,
believed
it's
in?
part of a priest's job, priest or priestess. I mean, I use the term priest as clergy person, gender neutral, but what we would consider like it's funny because we would actually rarely even use a word that translates as magic.
Mm.
And usually the word that we would use to describe what it is that like a clergy person would do in their community function is travail, work. Because it's literally part of our jobs. I think for an Houngan or a Mambo in Vodou, the person is the priest, they're the witch, the magician, the healer, the lawyer, the doctor. Like all of these different hats are sort of worn by the same person because they're sort of a de facto community head. So isolating magic down is like part of it. Um, I suppose it's like saying the phrase that you'll hear very often about masonry, where people will say, don't think of masonry as a society of secret or a secret society. Think of masonry as a society with secrets. Don't think of Vodou as a magical tradition. We are a specific sort of folkway religion, cultural phenomena with magic as part of it.
Mm-hmm. So by default, like people coming into the religion or people in the religion, like magic exists, or like the concept of magic or sorcery exists.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's very much seen as like a neutral force where it's the ethics of the individual that decide how they perform what they do. So while a lineage like mine, there are certain vows that we take where it's like, my lineage is not going to instigate harm. We're not going to hurt someone that doesn't deserve it. There's a lot of things that we say we're not going to do. That does not imply that those things are not real. It doesn't imply that the spirits would not do those things. It's that our lineage, our humans, have made an ethical decision not to. But lineages that do, or individuals that do, are just as valid. I don't like using the ideas of like the terminology of white magic versus black magic. I find to be really problematical. But you could think of it in terms of like work is work, magic is magic, the energy is the same. The nature of how the spirits work is up to the ethics of the individual who's calling them to do stuff.
Okay, because just as a particular law can heal, it can harm as well, right? Depending on how you ask it or what you ask it to do.
Right. I mean, asterisk C footnote. There are certain spirits, like Dambala is a perfect example. You would never ask Dambala Wedo to do anything violent. But that's because of this particular spirit. Well, no, I mean he's so impossibly ancient. He's coolness, he's peace, he's tranquility, he's prosperity. He's so far above doing anything damaging. Dambala can be angry, certainly, but it's like a practitioner would not ask Dambala to do harm to another individual. But outside of that, it's funny because this actually brings up a major misconception about people working with the spirits. There's this sort of belief on the internet and a lot of publications that say there's some hoodoo-y thing. Our spirits are not like the new age sort of appropriation tables of different world deities. Like you're not going to look up and say, well, I'm working a love spell. What love deity am I going to work with today? Let's sort of Google a name. Loa don't work by portfolio. That's a really difficult thing for a lot of people to sort of wrap their minds around. We don't have a love spirit. We don't have a war spirit. We have some that by their nature are warriors, but any spirit that you have with you can pretty much do anything that you ask them to. The way that you ask them is going to be unique to them. We're definitely going to talk about that in a little bit because that gets complicated. But it's about the intimacy of the connection between you and that spirit, not about, oh, this one's good for this topic, this one's better for this other topic. You see where I'm going with that? Like, you wouldn't say, oh, I need to work a healing. Let me flip through a book and find a name of a healing spirit, and I'm just going to call on them. It's very much the relationships that you've built with your court over time.
Okay.
Now, that's actually another. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so like even though that there's a universality to the travail or the work or the magic that a spirit can do, there are still things like specialities and things that spirit won't do, as well as with a person's court, like does that mean that they're also limited as to what kind of things that they can do too, or is that not really the case?
Well, no. I mean, when we say a person's court, what we're talking about is there are spirits that you inherit, and then there are spirits that are sort of autochthonic, like they are generated from the earth beneath you when you are born. Those together, our sort of understanding of how we think of ourselves is everyone that's human, everyone has access to spirit. Everyone's going to have little bubbles of energy around them. But anytime that you sort of take yourself into one of these traditions, the bubbles of spirit around you, as well as yourself, it's like if you adopt the paradigm of the tradition that you're working in, the spirits around you get to say, cool, this is the name I'm going to take on. And it's almost like the dramatis personae in a play or the cast of characters. Those bubbles of spirit are going to plug in where they're supposed to be. But different people are going to have sort of different connections to different forms of spirit. I guess a good example, like I sort of pull this one out of the blue, say La Sirène, our sort of power of the ocean. Not everyone's got a strong connection to ocean water. Not everyone's got a strong connection to tides or storms. So not everyone's going to have the same basic closeness to La Sirène. Readings, divination, like there are ways that a clergy person can say, oh, these are the spirits around you. This is the messages they've got, or the ones that want to work with you. That just takes a specific form of divination to do. But those beings that are sort of drawn to you for whatever reason, those are considered like your court, the spirits that escort you through the world. Most people typically are going to have somewhere between 3 and 7. And those are the folks that like you would serve. You would build a basic rapport with, build a basic understanding of offerings and prayer, and you're giving them energy while you're asking them to use it on your behalf. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah.
But like if everybody has somewhere between like 3 and 7, and I mean non-initiates on that level, if everyone's got between 3 and 7, and there are thousands of these spirits, not everyone's going to have the same court. Not everyone's asking the same beings to do the same kinds of work. And you kind of have to learn the spirits that you have to figure out like, all right, out of my spirits, who's going to do this style of work for me at any given moment?
Gotcha.
It gets complicated. It gets weird.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean,
the important it's the relationship between you and the Loa that allows this particular thing to happen, right?
Absolutely. But I mean, I think we're definitely one of those traditions that sees everything in terms of relationships. Okay. A frequent example that I'll give, and I'm trying to remember if I said this last time. Because she's my mom, I can probably give my mom a phone call and say, hey, so my electric bill's a little tight this month. Can I borrow $10? Not that $10 is going to do anything for anyone's electric bill in this day and age, but my mother, because she's my mother, is more likely to be like, sure, here's a little bit of cash, whether I pay her back or not, whatever. I can't say, well, what about your mom? She's just a mom, so let me call her and say, hey, so my electric bill's a little short. Can I get some money? She's going to say, who the hell are you? I don't have a relationship with her. I think the New Age approach that says, let me just look up through a list or directory of deities for my needs is too close to saying, well, you're just a mom, so I am calling mom, give me money, without the actual intimacy of the relationship that says she's my mother. Loa are very much like that. The spirits that you have a closeness to, you can actually really bother one of the spirits that's supposed to be one that you're serving if you're ignoring them and chasing some other name. If you're making offering after offering after offering to Freda, and Freda isn't with you, it's not going to get her attention. It might annoy her. And the spirit that you do have, who you're ignoring, is going to sit there and be like, what am I, chopped liver? Because we don't, like, the things that set us apart. I mean, we don't look at deity names or spirit names as though they're interchangeable. We don't look at them as though they operate by a portfolio or a set series of responsibilities. An individual, up until the particular point in initiation, an individual is not expected to be able to work with everybody. You work with the ones that are closest to you. And the strength that you build with your work as a worker is entirely based on how much of a relationship have you built with the spirits that actually do it for you. If we look at sorcery and magic from like a Western European idea, or even a modern American idea, we get an idea of a lot of these practices are going to be like, let me wake up the energy that's in these rose petals and the jasmine and my rose quartz and my incense, and I'm going to do something to raise energy and weave it through my aura and go bing out into the universe with my intention. That, I guess, would be a very sort of thaumaturgy way of looking at it. Ours is relationship oriented. I'm not really working with energies. I'm going to a spirit and saying, hey, so-and-so's got this job, and I think you're the best spirit that I've got for it. What's it going to cost me to get you to do it for them? We're lawyers. We're negotiators. We're lobbyists more than we are witches.
That's understandable. But, you know, given that if we're going to take the job or occupation allegory, what separates like a non-initiate versus initiate is to be able to know how to handle certain spirits when they're not in your court, right?
Right. Well, not just handle them. Say that you were under attack, where like Joe Schmo Ungan, Podziab Bonungan decided that, sorry, Podziab is our word for like, oh, the poor dear. Poor thing, Podziab. So Podziab Bonungan decides that he hates you for whatever reason, and he is working against you. And he is sending, let's say, Bakalu Baka, a particularly harsh little Petro spirit. He's sending Bakalu Baka at you to eat your energy. Bakalu Baka is not exactly a Loa that I work with intimately, but my priesthood gives me tools by which I can say, hey, dude, what's the problem here? What's it going to take for you to lighten up a little bit? Even though that spirit's not close to me, my office allows for a certain interruption where I can say, all right, so are you going to let me fix this, or are we going to have a problem? There's a lot of other ways. Like there are other spirits that we've got that we could sort of use. If I wanted to keep my hands undetectable or keep my energy out of it entirely, rather than interrupt and be like, hey, Bakalu Baka, long time no see. There are certain spirits in my court or spirits that I work with that I can ask them to go talk to him. Because they're not going to tell him it's me. They're just going to ask, hey, so what's the problem here? And I have that sort of safety buffer in the middle.
Kind of reminds me of like a reporting a Facebook post or something.
Seeing as my profile is currently on lockdown for 3 days because someone did just that. That's a dark little joke, but like we have very little that would be considered like outright witchcraft, because everything's in negotiation, everything's community. The spirits that we work with are community elders, just like our grandparents are. So the way that we talk to beings, the levels of respect that we show to beings, the basic animism of we see everything as inherently a being on its own, makes the sort of footing of the paradigm different from the idea of like casting a spell. Now that said, I mean, there are sort of projects that like, say that you work with Kuzenzaka and you go to him regularly for the same kind of project. Eventually, if Kuzen likes you, he's probably going to lean in and be like, you know what, this result, if you want me to do this, how about you put this little thing together? I will know it's a shortcut for this is the effect that you want. And when I see that you did this little thing, I'm going to give you that effect. We use the word wanga, W-A-N-G-A, wanga. And when wanga has a whole bunch of different meanings, but a wanga is basically like a little shortcut thing that a spirit gives the practitioner to just say, hey, if you put this together, I know what that means and I know what you're asking for. So it becomes this little shortcut of like, do you want to work a lamp for 3 weeks of repeatedly asking the same question that you already have a spirit's approval and you know that they're going to do it for you? No, you do the little shortcut thing that they gave you and boom, the work is done.
So it's not even really a spell, it's more like a cue or something.
Exactly. Okay. Because the spirit literally, like, and they'll give you in your dreams, they'll tell you, hey, put this together. You want this effect to happen? Do it this way. We'll make sure it gets done. And over time, those wanga sometimes get like passed down in the lineage. Like there are things that Maud has taught me how to do that I don't know if they taught her or if they taught her initiator or where in the background. But our lineage spirits have certain things that if we do this thing, they already know what we're asking for.
Okay, but that's also unique to every lineage too, right? Because it's all different.
Right, well, the individual spirits are unique to the lineage. That's the thing that a lot of folks don't get. It's why, like, if you're not in my lineage, if you're not a part of Société Nago, the veve that we've got, the langage, like the invocations, the stuff that's keyed to our spirits is completely useless in anyone else's hands. Because if you're not actually like gone through our Jebo, if you're not made part of our group, our lineage spirits have no need to answer you. Because ideally you would have your own. You would have the ones that you inherited, or you would have the lineage that you're supposed to be in. Vodou does, this is another actual sort of key difference. We don't have a solitary form. It's a community tradition. It's a community pathway. There are some folks in country, like, again, what you're going to see in the States or in Canada, like outside of Haiti, can be a little bit different. We'll get into why in a bit. But in Haiti, you can have like, sometimes we'll use the word bokor, or sometimes we'll use a term like an Houngan or Mambo makut, which literally means they carry everything in a makut. It's a backpack, sort of like shoulder bag. There are folks that are so close to spirit that spirit will just teach them to start working for clients, whether they're initiated or not.
Oh.
Typically those folks, like, there's checks and balances. Those folks are going to be really cool with the spirits that they have. But that person might not have the full introductions to do what, like, remember earlier when I said my office as a priest can give me that, like, hey, Bakalu, what's going on, man? Why are you hurting this person? That spirit doesn't work with me, but I have a way to talk to them. An Houngan or a Mambo Makut might have to learn specific things because they're not part of a lineage that teaches them how to do that. But they're completely valid. It's just like they are more mercenary. Even that's a difficult word. Mercenary implies harm, like are hiring a soldier. Houngan and Mambo Makut, like they're. If you're familiar with organizations like the Golden Dawn or different ceremonialists that talk about like the traditions that use the glyph of the Tree of Life as a symbol of how to work, will have two ways that the paths make sense. The path of the mage, where someone's going up level by level and studying toward the top and gaining powers on the way, versus the path of the mystic, when the center goes doink right down the middle and gives someone power. One of them is the sorcerer, the other is the Buddha, the Christ, the miracle worker. Houngan and Mambo Makut would be the equivalent of that. Certain spirits say, hey, I like you. I want you to work for me. Do these things for people. Be a traveling priest or priestess. That's a little bit different than somebody who goes into an initiatory order and is gradually taught. Both are valid, but they're very different expressions of the same style of spirit work. They work by those Wanga tricks that Loa are giving them more than they do big ceremony.
But then that would also imply that their own Wanga are also unique to themselves and that particular spirit that they work with.
Absolutely. Now, if those spirits were inherited from a parent, or if they have children that will inherit from them, those Wanga can work along those lines of descent. But they don't really have the full community. Like, it's going to be a little bit different. They would be more like the idea of a wandering or traveling priest that walks through the countryside, as opposed to the church with its building and all of its priests that people are going to. Both are certainly valid expressions of the divine. They just do what they do in different styles for different needs.
Okay.
So it's a catch. We tend to downplay the importance of Houngan and Mambo Makut outside of Haiti because, as we've seen with just about every magical tradition, the internet age has brought this idea of people can just say, oh yeah, my grandma did this and I do a little bit of it. We look askance at people that try to appropriate and say, well, I do a little voodoo, I read this book. Because that's not the same as an Houngan or a Mambo Makut. Those folks genuinely have a spirit, and it's not an internet article, it's not a book that they read, it's things that are very specifically transmitted to them that will have a specific and valid effect in this world.
Odd tangent, but with those particular was it Houngan, Mambo Makut, and Boko? Do they also follow like the 3-7 rule, where they or is that a little different on them? That
well, I mean, they're going to have their court, but they might be better at forging a relationship with that court and getting those spirits to work for other people. Gotcha. Those particular spirits that guide them might very strongly tell them, like, this is what I need for food, how you have to. I guess they'd be the closest to what we would have as like a natural born medium, because those spirits are communicating to them so effectively that they can hear it, they can feed those spirits, they can do the work they need. But I mean, there's limits to all. Like, there are things that they are free to do that I am not. And vice versa. Like, they're part of the overall umbrella of how this whole system fits together. Just like earlier when I was like, my lineage does certain ethical vows of behaviors that we're not going to do. There are people who genuinely need those behaviors. There are people they can go to that will get that work done. The fact that I can't do it as the type of priest that I am does not mean that that's not a valid piece of Vodou. It just means I've traded in certain things to be better at others.
Okay, gotcha.
But likewise, there are people who are damn good at those styles of working that like that's what they specialize in, just because it's not what I specialize in. Like we're not one of those traditions that's going to be like, oh, that style of work isn't real. That'll rebound on you and bring you karma. No, we like people do that work. It's just not what my lineage does. My lineage, like my mambo tends to look at things and she'll say that to quote her, she'll say that every Vodou ceremony is a healing ceremony. And I think that says a lot about the type of lineage that I'm in. But like,
so, oh, sorry.
Well, no,
so what happened?
Like,
yeah.
You.
So I was actually going to ask, because in our particular lineage, we don't have, we're sworn. Well, the priest and priestess, they're sworn to certain actions and certain other and restricted from some. What happens if that particular priest or priestess is multi-traditional? Does that still apply, or only applies to that one side of your spirituality?
Typically, I mean, I think they're going to be drawn to us specifically because they have a natural ethos that blends with ours. Also, like, just because Loa walk with you does not mean that they are permanently bound to you. This is another, like, thing where it's not a name that you're going to be like, who's the moon spirit? We're going to call them in circle. The spirits that you have with you, if you're acting in accord with their teachings, their ethics, they are sort of working with you to shape who you are as a person, then your actions, as long as they're in line with them, are going to be fine. If you transgress from their ethics too much, your spirits can leave you. This is another area where it's like the mercenary folks and the folks that like get paid to do harm. Unfortunately, one of the things that happens a lot of the times is they'll do something so whatever degree that spirits will start to leave them. When you're trapped in an environment where it's like, I have clients that I have to work for, and if my work isn't doing it for them anymore, they're not going to pay me. What am I going to do? Like, I can't tell these people, whoops, I effed up royally and my spirits left me, can't do it. There are other forms of spirit contact where you can actually purchase a job or like a hot point that spirit will do the work you tell it to and the work you pay it for. We call them planachete or purchased points. Bokor end up sort of in that world much more frequently than temple-based like Houngan and Mambos and Houngans. And I suppose like that's, if you start acting in ways that are not supported by your spirits, if you really bother them on an ethical level, that's the direction that it would end up carrying you, is you kind of require one of those wild things to do the work for you because your regular spirits wouldn't anymore.
Gotcha.
If that makes any sense. It's a really strange concept for a lot of people, but I suppose it would be like along the lines of like your mom raised you in a particular way, and if you've got a pleasant connection with your mother and you've got a good relationship, if you start acting in ways that are so egregious that she has to tell everyone around her, I didn't raise him like this, I don't know what's going on. As we've seen in certain dysfunctional families, there reaches a point where sometimes the parents and children are no longer speaking. The spirits are just the same. It can reach that point where the spirits are like, I tried, I am done with you, have at it. Gotcha. And it's not that the spirits are then trying to punish you for being an evil person, but they're no longer there to protect you from what they were protecting you from in the first place.
Gotcha.
So it gets scary.
But I mean, I guess there might be a way to, if someone were to breach that badly, their own ethos.
I mean, ideally, they're going to give you ways to apologize.
Okay.
If you consistently, through your ego, treat them like, I don't have to apologize to you, then they're going to get huffy and they're going to leave. If you try to treat them like slaves, they will leave you. They will
Mm.
not. We literally had a revolution about that and created a sovereign nation of people saying we're not property. Like, don't treat your spirits like slaves. Um, if you start
Big.
treating them, if you start treating them like attack dogs, if you want them to hurt people, it's really hard, if not impossible, to get them out of that vibe. And then that's literally all you have is stuff that, like, it'll hurt people as long as you're feeding it, but it's constantly going to demand more and more out of you until it's your family, your friends, and you who are on a plate. Yeah, it's just, it's not good to do that. And I think, like, when you find those people that think that that's what we are because that's what Hollywood is presented, like, no, what I mean is, like, there are people that want to, like, I get so many phone calls per week that are like, either how do I give the cocaine to Legba like American Horror Story showed me,
The
or
ship.
oh, don't get me started, but like the people that want, like, I need to get my baby daddy killed. There are so many people that get trained by Hollywood or trained by whatever media they're consuming that voodoo is like, oh, voodoo, that's the dark stuff, that's the scary. That when they find out that you're a voodoo priest, they come to you for that. And you have to try to tell them, like,
It's not
that's,
really.
you're looking at about 150 to 200 years of racist media portraying us as something really ugly because they wanted people to be afraid of the black people on that island. That's not our tradition. That's not what we do. Um, it is what some Bokors do. Don't tell them that. But, like, there's so much where, like, that is what draws people to the tradition because they think, like, ooh, I can take a couple classes online and learn how to be that spooky. And it's
But I
always
mean,
like,
like the idea of Bokor and the Houngan and Mambo Makut aren't as well known as the Houngan and Mambo that are usually featured in documentaries and all that other stuff, right?
well, part of it is most of the work that was done through like the 1920s through like maybe 50s with the academics, Herskovitz, Korlander, Mayadarin, like a lot of the folks that were going to Haiti to study were in the Port-au-Prince area, looking at houses that were specifically Asson lineages, the materials that sort of worked their way out into the rest of the world about what Vodou was were actually written about a very specific regional variation. But that's all the researchers had access to. No one told the researchers, oh, by the way, like things are different in Léogane or La Plaine, or if you go up to like all the way up north, the Great Lac are going to be different. Those early researchers didn't have access to the different regional variants. So what they sort of spread into the world that sort of worked its way into New Age spaces is a very limited view of Vodou as a whole.
Mm.
Well, I mean, in a way, that's a good thing. It limits people's ability to just be able to think that they can freely appropriate, because as long as they're working from what's in print, anyone who's actually in the tradition can take one look at that person and be like, yeah. But I think when I say racism and racist media, I mean, there's also other components to that where it's really common that traditions that are Euro descended tend to look at everyone else's work as like, that's just there for the taking. When you get traditions that are taught by their own, like literally a brand new tradition that was written in the 1930s, when that got open source, the open source people are like, oh, we are the old religion. We're the source of all magic. So let me look at that magic that you're doing because I want to learn it. It doesn't work that way. It needs the community. It needs the community introduction. It needs the relationship with those powers. But it's its own separate paradigm. Like when we say closed system, we're not saying everyone is locked out. We're saying that this particular paradigm has like genuinely a way it works. That also means it has a whole host of ways that it doesn't. But if you want to be part of it, just commit to doing it for real. We'll let you in, we'll teach you, we'll bring you to the temples, we'll teach you the dances and the songs, and if it's right for you, like you can work toward initiation. Everyone's welcome, everyone has spirits. But part of the thing is like you got to respect the tradition and walk in the right way. No one's necessarily, unless there's a serious mental health problem, no one's going to just jump up in the middle of mass, grab the communion bowl from the priest and say, I'm going to do this myself, and start passing it out. Everyone gets that that's a religion that has an actual trained priesthood and a way that it works. But everyone starts doing like, well, I'm a child of Oshun because Beyonce smashed out windows wearing yellow. Or I like Freda, I work with Erzuli. And we're like, which one? Erzuli. And we're like, there's thousands. Erzuli. It's a family name like Smith. There's so many issues where people just want to take from whatever they can because they think that they're special enough to understand it without doing the work. That's why it's sometimes difficult to get into discussions like we meant to, where it's like, how does Vodou view magic and sorcery? We can talk about like things that Vodou can do. But outside of certain instances, it's really hard for a priest to teach folks that are not part of the tradition things you can do, because you have to sort of be part of the tradition to be able to do them. You have to form that relationship with those spirits to get those spirits willing to work for you. Because otherwise, if they don't know who you are, even saying, hey, Ogu, I got this thing, come do this. Ogu's going to look at it and be like, I'm not your slave. And it gets dangerous. Like these are, in Creole, very like a sort of proverb we have that's one of the shortest sentences ever. Loi pas jouer. The spirits don't play.
No, they don't.
It's about respect. It's about carrying that respect, carrying that honor to them, and learning like, all right, if you want to work with these beings, learn how to do it right. Don't be one of those people that's like, well, I read this book, I do a little voodoo. Oh, I stuck pins in dolls, wicked voodoo magic. Like,
yeah. It looks like Sherwin asked a couple of questions. The first one, I think,
I don't actually, on my screen, I don't have access to the chat thing. So folks that are asking questions, I can't see it from where I am.
Are you able to go into the tabs in the comments or whatever?
Comments.
Yeah, if you just
aha,
yeah.
Yes. What could one do that would be so bad for one Loa to leave them other than murder or steal? Really, it's about ethics. I mean, certainly commanding them as though they're slaves, disrespecting them. If you have gone through mariage Loa, like having sex with someone on that spirit's day, and then like, well, no, I mean, it's for someone's spirits to leave you, like it's a big thing for it to get to that spot where they're going to depart. They're not going to do it because of trivial things, but like I know of one instance, I think she would have left him. There was a guy that he'd gone through mariage Loa, and because of that, he was supposed to be celibate on Thursdays in honor of Erzeli Freda. And I think he tried to make some excuse, like his girlfriend was traveling and they only had one day to get it on. So he had sex on Thursday when he wasn't supposed to. Freda demanded, if he wanted to be able to get it up again, she needed 3 full fetes thrown in her honor that he paid for entirely. A full community fete in that kind of party, that can run up to $5,000 for the night. So literally she was demanding at least $15,000 in payment just for him to get over that, like he had sex one night without her permission and on her night where she was supposed to be respected. If he had done it again, if he had been like, woman, you crazy, I'm not paying you for that, I'm just gonna, like, he could have made that worse to the point where Freda basically could have thrown up her hands and been like, I'm done, I'm out. It's ugly.
Have there been cases where the Loa never come back to the person?
Oh yeah, no. I mean, if it's really that gribbly, if it's really gross, that's part of why Plenashte are a thing. The folks that have to go and purchase a working point to do their work for their clients, do so because their regular spirits are never going to come back. Even the act of purchasing something like that, it's valid. You could buy that thing that'll do the work. But the spirits that you're supposed to be building relationships with are going to look at that as you took a shortcut. Why would I want to work with you again if you're not interested in telling me you're sorry? Instead, you're going to just get yourself a shortcut. They're not going to come back because you really bruised their ego. Now, Sherwin, I see you also asked, does a person have to be Haitian to be a Bokor? I actually personally don't know. Bokor as a term has, I mean, why is it that every time we have a term in Vodou, it's one of these words that's got like 47 meanings? Bokor can talk about the clergy specifically of Makaya as a tradition. Those priests have Bokor as a name. Bokor can be somebody similar to an Houngan or a Mambo Makut, where it's like these spirits just come to them and start working. Bokor can be someone that has broken away from a lineage to say, that's it, I'm independent, screw y'all, I don't like your ethics, and I'm just going to take what you taught me elsewhere. Some people will call themselves Bokor when they do that kind of work. I don't know if that person has to be Haitian or not, but I think that the idea of that kind of role is it's so much a part of Haitian like identity and culture that to try to do that without being Haitian or without being raised in the climate, it would be weird. It would be really weird. Yeah. I think for most foreigners, if Loa are really coming down to you and saying, hey, let me teach you how to do something, and it's genuine, it's, especially for those of us that are not raised in the Haitian cultural envelope, the best thing you could possibly tell someone to do if they've got these spirits coming to them is seek out clergy, get a reading, go to parties, go to fetes, kind of work your way into the culture and figure out, am I in this or am I insane? Because I think if they can work their way even to just being able to like attend a party where a spirit comes down in possession, you can ask that Loa, hey, am I in this for real? Are you actually calling me? What's going on? And get an answer from spirit directly. I think without cultural guidance, without a cultural envelope of people that are able to recognize what's going on, that someone who just says like, hey, I feel today like I'm going to call myself a Bokor, I'm 99.4% certain that would just be fantasy on that person's part and be like a very short road they're walking on, if that makes any sense.
Oh, I bet. Well, I mean, it's pretty straightforward.
I mean, it's a thing.
Even with the even with that, like, you know, Loa coming down to foreigners, it's still a fine line between like appropriation and, you know, I don't know, like it's just you really do have to seek somebody who knows and who's part of a legitimate line to actually get proper answers anyway, right?
Absolutely. But I mean, even within lineages, like one of the functions that clergy has for lay people, but also one of the purposes that clergy has for each other within a lineage. Say that a spirit comes to me and gives me a dream that is complex symbols. I mean, dreams very often are. But in the process of breaking down the dream, things start looking like, wait a minute, this particular spirit doesn't take that color. Or this is skirting a taboo for somebody, or something's wrong here. Working with other practitioners and clergy, especially within our own lineage, can be like, wait a minute, is this dream me having just a regular dream and brain candy, or is this spirit genuinely trying to tell me something? We actually have that support network where we talk to each other. Somebody that just says, hey, I had this dream, so I'm going to do it because the spirit's telling me something, when they've never been in the culture, never been in a ceremony, or never talked to clergy, they risk madness. I mean, if there's no check, if there's no confirmation of this spirit really did give me this message and tell me how to do this thing, we don't know who it is that's doing the message. Sherman's got another question. He says, can Houngans or Mambos from different houses help with Kanzo and Lavete? Yes, depending. The temple that you're made in is very much like, using mine as an example, Maud is my mother. Maud owns the temple. It's her land. It's her denambwe. People that I bring to our lineage that are going to get Kanzo become her children. However, Ungans and Mambos from different lineages must have access. If they can do the passwords, if they can prove to us that they are who they say they are, they must be able to see the inside of the Jevo, be able to see different components of the kids being made, because that's part of how our reputation starts. I'm able to say, like, yeah, I was made in 2001 or 2009, whatever year your Kanzo was. I'm a child of so-and-so. So-and-so are my godparents. Other people were témoins to my asal, meaning like those people were the witnesses when I was made. You can ask those people in different lineages and they'll be able to tell you, Mambo Maud does it right. For a starting priest or priestess, that's actually how your reputation begins, is no one knows your work. You don't have any yet. But to be able to say you are well made, the product of a particular temple that's known for doing stuff well, and other people who are not our siblings say they were made right. That gives you a starting reputation that's stellar. Without that, like if you're one of those, if you've seen those houses online where like, there's two of them specific that I can think of where the Mambo in charge will be like, oh, my family died, I inherited the temple, I'm just doing this on my own, it's just my people. That's a major red flag, because if it's just their people, there's no outsiders to say that so-and-so did this right. It requires the assistance of other people.
Okay, so that like
now the other people that are helping, like you can't have one Jevo is not capable of birthing children for different parents. You're not going to have like, even in the same lineage, like say my brother Tyler or Alex or my sister Kenya or like anybody, we can't run a Kanzo where it's like, well, the people on this side of the room are Matt's kids and the people on that side are Tyler's or Bruce's or Sonia's. The process is the Kanzo is creating godchildren for one specific priestess, even if others are assisting, and others assist all the time. There's one of the priests that does a heck of a lot of work for us down in our house in Haiti. Went to Asagwe in a different lineage. Like he works with us full time, but we didn't. He's not a product of our Jevo, but he still does a lot of the work for our initiates. That's okay. Common.
So just clarification. So when you say that when people are made through the Jevo, they don't actually become part, like they're not compartmentalized under different godparents. It's just a single godparent.
Right. Well, okay, so godparent is one of those tricky terms, because technically I could say, because Maud is my initiatory mother, I could say Maud is my godmother. Yeah. And in English, that makes sense. That would be like Lukumi folks saying, oh, Omimeli is my madrina. Great, that's the title that she holds. But you also have two people when you come out with a ritual called Leve Kanzo and Baptem. When you are reborn, there are two people that will be your godmother and godfather that stand for you at the baptism. They are not the person who did all the work running it to make you an initiate, even though they've got the titles godmother and godfather. In Creole, I would say like my mama or maman or like Mambo Maud for me, my mother. But my godparents are marraine and parrain, mother and father, respectively. The titles are different.
So for myself, would that technically make Mambo Maud my...
Right, and because Lave Tet doesn't have the same baptism that we do for Kanzo, you don't have the same Maran and Paran thing. But because you did Lave Tet in our house, Maud is your mother.
Okay.
Right. Say that you went to Haiti and did Kanzo with us, and she did the work for the temple, and like Benita and I stood for you at your baptism. Maud would still be your mother. It's her temple. But Benita and I would be your Maran and Paran, respectively. But it doesn't really give us power over you. It's still her house, very much that way. Where was I going with that?
I'm guessing you're
But
trying
yeah,
to get the
it
proper
requires
terms.
the what?
I mean, like you were trying to kind of clarify the terms of how people
Oh, because
like.
the question about Godfather, right?
Yeah.
But it does. It still requires the intercession and like the supervision, if you will, of people from different houses. Even though like you can't do it where like you certainly can't do it where a JVO is going to be split, where it's like this part is this house's kids and that part is a completely different lineage's kids. It just doesn't work that way at all. But members of other lineages must be able to say those kids were made correctly in that house.
Okay.
There's a word that we'll sometimes say is telejol. Telejol is like it's a portmanteau of like telephone and jawbone or jabbering. Telejol is the ability to say, hey, you can call so and so. They're not from my lineage, but they'll be able to tell you that my house did it right. And that's a big thing. Like being able to prove that you actually are who you say you are is big, especially when there are so many people that are just frauds. It becomes important to be able to prove who you are.
Well, I mean, it's kind of solidified because now there's a witness from another lineage,
Bingo.
right?
Right.
Okay.
Also, like initiations, a thing that sometimes people don't realize with us, the rank that you hold or the rank that you take begins a process if it gives you license to learn what that rank can do.
Mm-hmm.
Initiation is done by people of the top rank. So even if you're going because you're going to take that rank, you don't really have the right yet to know how it's done until afterwards, because you don't have a license to see it. So where was I going with that? There was a reason why. I'm so embarrassed. I totally lost that train of thought. Where did that start?
Was it more about like the confirmation of you were made properly, sort of thing, along those
Oh,
lines?
right. Because like you have to be a specific rank to know how the process is done. So there are sort of security questions we can give a person to prove, like, does this person know how it was done? Because if they don't, they are clearly lying about the whole process and they don't even realize that they've been called on it. There's a lot that like, we're very subtle in a lot of ways. It's not a tradition or a culture that does a lot of direct call out, but there will be a lot of like sort of subtly weaving. If one of those people that you call says like, she doesn't do things right over there, to say something that direct is almost like dropping a bomb.
You know, off topic, the ideas of like the rankings and having a license to be able to learn after you receive that rank is very reminiscent of Masonry. Just an observation.
Yeah, but where geographically are the oldest lodges in this hemisphere? Port-au-Prince. There's so much bleed over between Masonry as a sort of root to our traditions. I want to say, like, if you think about it, the Haitians, especially in the naissance of Haiti as a nation and Vodou as a thing, we blended and respected every root that the tree was grown from. So you've certainly got all the different West African kingdoms, but you also have Islam, you have Catholicism, you have Masonry, you have all of these things that came together to become what we are now. None of them were selectively edited out where it's like, well, we're going to keep the Nago people, but we're going to get rid of the Fawn. That would have been disrespectful to ancestors that became part of us. So like using Masonry as an example, those old lodges in Port-au-Prince informed a lot of the Port-au-Prince area, which spread out and diasporized. A ton of the content of Asson lines is literally taken directly from Masonry. Or I shouldn't say taken from. It's an evolution of Masons that joined the tradition and became part of it. It's simply like It wasn't, oh, we're going to take that appropriation. It was a fusion where Masons were part of what we became. But yeah, there's a lot of strong reminiscence from certainly having the rank, all of the passwords and handshakes, and you name it, we've got it. But I think a lot of systems have that aren't necessarily even connected to Masonry. It's sort of the idea of like entrance into Asogwe could be like you were able to get accepted to university for your doctorate program. Just because you were admitted for your doctorate, if you've not done your generals, if you haven't defended your thesis, if you haven't even written a thesis, you can't claim PhD credentials yet. But you're in a PhD program. Asogwe is kind of similar. I mean, we basically slap the word doctorate on you, but it gives you the right to learn what an Asogwe can know, even if you're not like born knowing all of it. Certainly, sort of to return back to the topic, you're going to be more likely to have a good connection with your personal spirits and a lot of little Wanga that they've taught you how to do.
Gotcha.
Now, I mean, out of that, so, and again, sort of returning to tonight's sort of over example, while it does take divination to tell a person, especially a lay person, these are the Loa that want to talk to you, messages they've got, stuff they want you to do, these are the folks that'll work with you. There are certain spirits that everyone has access to simply by being human. Everyone has access to the Legbas, and everyone has access to the Gede. We live, we communicate, we talk amongst each other, and we die. So the two extremes, everyone has access to those in some way, shape, or form. Contrary to...
Sorry, but when you mean Gede, you're not necessarily also including the Beon and Brigitte at that point, right? It's just Gede.
Well, it's Gede as a division.
Okay.
There are certain... This is jumping ahead of where I wanted to be for just a second, but there are certain Gede that are what we call Gede Racine, or root spirits, that are some of the oldest. Pretty much it's safe to say that everyone has access to, like Brav, Gede Mazaka. There's certain names that are like the most ancient of the Gedes. There are other things where you are going to, as over time, build a connection to your own Gedes. That's separate. That gets into some initiatory mysteries that are like not secrets, but just out of scope for tonight. I do want to point out, contrary to sort of general online and new age fiction books that supposedly teach how to do this, Legba is not a singular entity. Legba is a family name for thousands of spirits. There are many different Legbas. Legbas are the forces that are responsible for opening the doorway to a separate group of no spirits. If I want to talk to someone in Rada, I talk to the Rada Legba first and say, could you open the door for me to talk to so-and-so? But when I get into another nation of spirits, if I'm doing Petuel, there's a Petuel Legba I have to talk to, even though I already talked to the Rada guy. And that seems to go over a lot of people's heads, as you see this blanket statement of like, oh, just talk to Papa Legba. And those of us in the know are like,
which one?
Which one is that? We give the honorific of Papa to all of them. But like, depending on the work that you want to do, everyone has access to the Legbas as a whole. So you could start Rada style if you take the time to learn what that is. That's the wearing white, that's the spirit, like the energetic cleanliness, no sex the day before, all that stuff. And you can set things up in such a way with Legba to say, I'm interested in being carried to the right front door for me. I want like my spirits to help bring me to an environment that can teach me. That's kind of the safest if we're going to talk like what kind of sorceries or things can non-initiates do with their spirits. One of the best you can do is ask your Legbas to help bring you to the right environment where your spirits will be properly taught, respected, and honored. I think any of us that are like responsible clergy, you can come to any of us and say, how do I do that? And my job is to teach you how to do that so your spirits take you to the right spot. If that's to my house, great. If that's to someone else's house, great. My job is not to say you're mine. My job is to make sure your spirits get to the spot that they need to be. A lot of folks miss that.
Sherwin has another question there.
How can you tell if your kanzo was done correctly, if the effects afterwards, how can you tell if it was done wrong? That's a really big topic.
Is it too much for this?
Well, it's risky. The problem is, like, I don't like being somebody that's just like, let me open the door to a world of drama. Because sometimes the examples that I would have to give, no matter how vague or subtle I would make them, are very strong call outs of specific community people. And like, the last thing I want is to like create a witch war. Kanzo,
I think, I'm sorry, but I think one of the biggest markers would probably be madness, right? If something was done wrong.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if something was done incorrectly or the wrong spirit was seated, it's very common that people in that circumstance basically go through a psychological break. And a big one. It can be scary. I've seen it. Again, I can't really give away what sound like examples because they're so specific that it would be calling out individuals. But madness can be right. Madness is madness. Another one also, like, the process isn't instant. No, you don't worry about it being conversational opening questions, Sherwin. I think that's just something that like you and I can talk about in private, because it's not going to be. I don't want to come across like I don't want to answer you, because I'd love to have that conversation. It's just a really big one that I think some of the details are best initiate to initiate and not out there for the public. I don't want to make it come across like I'm forcing public loyalties from one environment to another or creating drama where it doesn't need to be. But a private conversation, we can get into it. If an initiation's done right, I mean, in theory, Kanzo as a process knocks you to a position of infancy. There's a period of time where you are helpless and the community is responsible for you. And then there's a period of time that's like an adolescence where the community is raising you up. There's a lot of hallmarks for that, like feeding the collier, what the collier does, the 41 days or 3 months of different restrictions afterwards to let those energies settle in. That's kind of like being a teenager. Then there are the masses that are done, like when that period is like complete, you go to mass and say, cool, my initiation process is done and now this is who I am. It's still not fully formed. I think there's a lot of changes that happen. Very often I see folks that go through even a really well done Kanzo go through what the Wiccans might consider like your second degree crisis of you get that initiation and it's almost like everything feels like it just went wrong. But what's actually happening is your spirits are breaking the unhealthy patterns around you. They're helping to remove the influences around you that you really shouldn't have, or energies that are just sucking your energy. They're going to help get rid of that and break it. So sometimes it's, and again, that's that tricky, what are you looking at? Are you looking at madness? Or are you looking at, it's not really crisis, but it feels like it when you're in the middle of it? Is there a direction that it's going? Because a well-done initiation kills you and rebirths a wholly separate person. You're still you. It's not like we're murdering people. But energetically and spiritually, the person that steps out of that initiation chamber is not the person who went in. So there should be quite a bit of like energetic changes, because it's a transformation. It's that chrysalis. You can't get a butterfly to go back to being a caterpillar. And if you see them come out of the chrysalis and you see the butterfly, you know, okay, something in that transformation was right.
But from like I guess a Western or an Abrahamic point of view, that's the idea of like baptism, right? Putting to death the old person and being reborn in you as a new person, right? Like
right. And the initiation ceremonies conclude with a baptism anyway.
Oh, okay. I
They
thought the
just
entire
start.
like I just did okay because I always had in my mind that the entire Kanzo was like a huge ass baptism.
It basically is. I mean, the baths that you go into before, I can't get into specifics about what the pre-initiatory baths do, but well, like earlier last time when we were talking about our cosmology, the concept of like water being the vehicle by which spirits travel and the dead being put under the water. Well, when you are bathed in those blessed waters, you are put under the water. You are now among the dead, and you are pushed into the pushed proverbially into the initiation chamber. What comes out is a reborn person, and your energy is different. It's one of the reasons why, like, sometimes if you're under like really dire sorceress attack, a lavetet or a kanzo, even if it's just a hunsi kanzo, the lowest rank, the fact that that which walks out of the ceremony is not the being that walked into it means no matter what spells or whatever they're throwing at the person who walked in, that person dies. All of that work disappears. What comes out of that chamber is inherently protected because they're a different energy. That's a big, big thing. Like if you've got a lot of, if you're one of the people that's under the effects of either like curses or sorcery or stuff like that, if the continuance of work that you knew was there before you went in is still happening when you come out, there's a problem. The initiation, something wasn't done right. Madness is one. Does the community as a whole recognize you? That's tricky, especially for someone like me that's not necessarily visibly Native Haitian. There are steps I have to go through sometimes to prove like, nope, I am who I say I am, and I am what I say I am, and I was well made. There are folks that I've seen that will say, oh, no, that person, like, I don't really like the guy, but he gets it. If the community responds to you and your house as though you were done right, it's rare that there would be something creeping up in your kanzo that would have been done incorrectly. Because the wider community is able to recognize from your work, from your spirits, from the way you handle your tools, something's accurate here. Even if it's a little fuzzy, even if it's different, because different lineages do things differently. It's one of our biggest acts of magic when it comes down to it. Like kanzo, the process is made of so many different ceremonies that are geared toward doing specific things and major changes or big protections or big vows. That's another reason, like earlier when we were talking, like how does Vodou view the concept of magic? It's not something that we see as separate from what we are. Because so much of what we do, even to become a priest or a priestess in this tradition, is to endure so many of these ceremonies where you are the recipient or the target of so much magic that it permeates everything we do. Yeah, it's huge.
Oh, definitely no. I'm given how long Kanzo cycles are, I would expect that you're subjected to a lot. Like it's not a 1 day affair. I mean, like it's a lot. It's a while.
It's about 2.5 weeks of solid ceremony in my lineage. Not every line does the same thing, but we get about a week of ceremonies to prepare us to go in. Before even getting put in the JVO, there's a whole bunch of stuff that gets done first. Some of it is to burn off energies that shouldn't be on you. Some of it is to empower all the roots and the powders and the herbs that are going to be part of the process. Some of it is certain tools for you are made on a specific day and then heated to give them energy. Then there's your baths. Then you go in, and in my line, we're inside for 9 days. Some lineages, 9 days is too short. Some lineages will put you in for 21. Shorter than 7 can get to problem areas. Like I know people that literally, they were told everything was condensed down into 4 days and 4 days alone. Congrats, you're an Houngan or a Mambo. And we're like, yeah, no. But you're in for 9 days. Then there's the big baptism party when you come out. Then there's a pilgrimage where there's a certain number of churches you have to go to. Then you're done-ish. At least the work is done. But then there's 41 full days of restrictions you have to do to sort of let those changes settle. And then you got to go to Mass again. It's not small. It's not small.
Stretch.
But that's another, like, it's hard for me because I started as a New Age practitioner. Like I had a lot of stuff that I did once that I no longer do now that I'm here. But it's one of those, like, when you've got folks that their practice can get them initiated to whatever they need to be in a couple hours in an afternoon, attempting to say that they can control what it takes about 3 weeks of solid ceremony even to get your introduction to, I don't want to come across as inherently bougie or conceited, but it's like, let the stuff inside the tradition be for the tradition. If you want to do it, come in, we'll show you. But don't try to do it on your own, because you're not more special than like the entire country. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, I have my teaching blog. Like, there's a lot of stuff that non-initiates can do. Once you know who those spirits are that are the ones that want to work with you, then we can actually teach you, like, cool, he likes these colors, she likes this booze. There's, like, we can teach you how to start working with them and getting results. But it really takes knowing who are the ones that want to work with you. Because if I just say, oh, do this for Kuzen Zaka, if Kuzen doesn't talk to you, or he's not the Azaka specifically that works with you, what I'd say in public about what to do to help him or to get him to help you would be useless. Or worse, it would be annoying to him, which would get you punished for something I taught you how to do. That's just bad. There's a lot that people can do, but it really does revolve, 94% of it revolves around building that relationship with the spirits who are already there for you. Once you know who they are, then we can teach you the equations to get them to do their stuff. Then you can start getting things done for yourself and be like, wow, this is more than I thought. But without those readings, it's just useless. Other than the Legba and the Gede, because everybody can have access to those, but then it would still, like, we got to teach you how to do it right. Some of the cleansers, like the spiritual hygiene baths, if you're under negative energy, there are magics a person can do that are based in the power of the ingredients themselves. Like,
but so you don't need, like, the intervention of a Loa at that point.
Right. I mean, one of the best examples is there are cleansings that you can do that would feature, say, like limes. Lemon, lime, and garlic are ingredients that we use to break energy. Okay. So in exchange, like, no food that goes on a spirit's table should have lemon, lime, or garlic. You could substitute other things, but not those ingredients, because you'd be putting a dish that breaks energy. That bath, if you're doing something that's a cleansing bath that's based in lime, you're not going to ask a spirit to empower it, because it literally breaks their energy.
Oh, is it like a poison to it? Is it, or not really?
It's just, it repels energy. It breaks up conditions. I know.
I mean, what I'm trying to say is, it's not like a fairy's weakness to iron or something like that, right? It's nothing similar or dangerous.
It can be, and that's the issue.
Oh,
like,
okay.
I mean, I never throw a lemon wedge from your iced tea on someone's altar because they piss you off. Like, that's, don't do the rude stuff. But, like, it is a thing that washes away magic. Not all of it. There are things that, like, will stay there with lime, but that idea of, like, the baths that are based in that arena would be something that you could do to basically take off the degree of negativity that a non-initiate can handle can be addressed by this bath. Much like you can bleach your teeth with Crest White strips. It's not going to be the same as getting a dental bleaching, but it's something you can do. You don't need to call your dentist for a white strip. You don't need to call a Loa for a cleansing bath like those. But there are things that, like, liturgically or systemically, you have to do after a cleansing like that to restore positivity, and those are the things that your spirits would be very involved in. So, like,
Oh, gotcha.
I'm not advocating to anyone watching this to just throw limes in your bathtub and be like, voodoo guy said I could clean myself this way, because there are things in our tradition that you do to bless yourself after. Yeah, sure, when you would never put lime on your head. And technically, after Kanzo, you shouldn't be using limes at all in that regard. There's a separate bath that you would do to keep that cleanliness, but not with lime. Yeah, and then, like, if anyone's curious about the bath that I'm talking about, if you go to my website, darklady.net, and then click on the tab that says the blog, I think the article is called The Christmas Baths, but it talks about that cleansing that uses lime. And Sherwin's right. You would never do it on the head. The lime bath is going to be directionally pushed from your shoulders down, because you're pushing all the negativity out through your feet and into the tub drain. It's also it's not a bath that you soak in. It's a bath. It's a skin treatment. It's something that you use on the outside of your body. And commensurately, after you do that, there's a blessing bath that you'd have to do from your feet up to pull, and, like, wherever negativity used to be, you want to fill that hole so that the universe doesn't just shovel more stuff into it. You want to cover yourself in blessings from the feet up, so that you're starting off on a blessed foot. Sorry, you had a question?
Okay. Yeah, so when you say lime, but does that also apply to lemon and garlic as well, for, like, should not touch the head?
Ideally. You probably don't want to use the garlic oil that's better for your sandwich as, like, a hair dressing. But yeah, the specific cleansings in which we use lemon, lime, or garlic would not touch the head. But the head is the seat of your spirits. So whether your spirits are in balance or not, whether you've got what we call tête chargée, or, like, too charged ahead, like too much spiritual activity that's causing chaos, you wouldn't want to put those ingredients on to, like, break energy, because that would just, like, sort of energetically be really bad for you.
Yeah.
Shoulders down, shoulders down.
Okay.
Oh, Sherwin, it was after Kanzo specifically, because of all the energies that are done, like what's done to you, the cleansing baths that you would do on yourself would not feature lemon, lime, or garlic. There's specific baths that you should be given of, like, what you do afterwards to make sure that you don't accelerate the process of your spirits cooling down too much, or washing their effect off of you. I can't really give those recipes in a form like this, just because we're public, but, like, you can do the cleansings that just don't feature lemon or lime. There's other recipes that you can do. Yeah, once your Kanzo, you should be careful with those ingredients. It's not going to destroy anything. It's not going to undo you, but, like, you just don't want to do them often at all. But again, like, sort of to everyone else, that's the thing, is, like, the Kanzo process, like, involved in all of those different ceremonies are things and energies that we carry afterwards that we have to be careful of and we have to respect as clergy. That's another sort of way to tick off the spirits, is if I'm disrespectful of the process that I went through. Knowingly disrespectful, not necessarily ignorantly, because they can forgive that. But if I am deliberately, like, I'm being bad, it's only going to cause my spirits problems, and that causes me problems because they take it out on my luck.
So when you say, like, you can't take, like, lime, lemon, like the citrusy type fruit, and garlic, or should not be done often.
Like, I have different recipes that I use because those aren't supposed to be put on an initiate's body. They're great. Like, I can make that bath for a client that's not Kanzo themselves. I do that all the time. That's what I do. But I would not bake it myself.
Okay. Oh, okay. So, like, even after Kanzo, you mean, like, for the rest of your life, you can't do that, right?
I have different recipes. Like, it's not. Well, no. I want to make sure that we're being clear.
Okay.
After the initiation, there's nothing saying you can never take another cleansing bath. It's
Yeah.
just there are certain ingredients, because you carry energy differently as a priest than you do as a non-initiate,
Mm.
that you don't want to wash off the energy that you're carrying. Like working with ingredients that are selectively respectful of what's been done to you. You don't want to go all the way or try to go back to a blank paper slate, because that would screw you up for the ability to function as an initiate.
Okay. That's the clarity I was seeking, because it's like, oh, so you can't do that once you're consoed.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because again,
Mm-hmm.
like nothing can undo the conso. You can't take initiation away from somebody. Their spirits
But you
can
can
be.
but
You
you
can
can
mess
certainly
it up. Right. You can disrupt, and that would be really bad.
fair enough. Okay. There's actually one I want to ask, going back to our previous topics, or back to stuff that we talked about earlier. I know we had said that there's a universality to work being done and stuff that can be done within, like within the context of voodoo, of magic and sorcery. But is there not like spirits that are actually geared towards magic and sorcery, like Cindy, for
Oh,
example?
no, well, okay. So when I say things like spirits don't work by portfolio, what I
Okay.
mean is you are not restricted in, like, if you're doing a love work for a client. This is I'll talk about one of my secrets. It's not really a secret, but it's just like a key to my work. When clients come to me for love work, the assumption that most people in the public make is that I'm going to do that work on the point of Erza de Freda. Because to the
Mm.
public, for some weird reason, Freda is the love deity, because her veve is heart-shaped.
Mm.
To me, there's a different spirit named, well, Kuzen Zaka. Zaka and his wife have to have the compromise and working kind of love. They have a farm, they've got a family. Their communication style, like, it doesn't matter if they're fighting, they have to compromise and keep the family moving forward. The fact
Mm.
that they know that there's so much work they have to do to stay together, that to me is real love. So if I'm working a love project, I'm probably going to ask Kuzen to intercede on the client's behalf more than I would Freda. That doesn't mean that Freda is bad at it. It's just I have a particular spirit that's better with that style of work for me and my clients.
Okay.
But the portfolio approach, people would say, but he's a farmer. What are you doing with him? Like, no, she's the loved one. Vodou doesn't work that way. The spirit that you are closer to can do the work for you.
Mm.
Most of the work itself is in controlling a type of energy that we call heat. Vodou, the Fon and Gwe ethnic group descended traditions of Vodou stand in opposition in a way to the Yoruba Nago descended tradition concept of Ashe, where Orisha traditions have this idea of like that which is God is light, and the light is filtered through prisms that are Orisha and spirits. And humans and plants and everything carries Ashe, but to them, Ashe is a force that moves from the creator out into the world. Vodou doesn't look at top down. We have a system called règlement, the rules, which organizes things in comparative states of cool to hot. We talked a little bit about this last time. Like
Mm.
yin and yang in Taoism refer literally to the sunny and shady sides of the same mountain. You could say that the moon is yin in comparison to the yang of the sun, but the moon is yang in comparison to the yin of the night sky. Everything is in comparative states. We organize what we see in comparative states of heat. And by heat, we mean all forms of kinetic volatility, viability, vitality, actual heat, sourness, anger, passion, lust, all of that strength. Those are hot feelings, as opposed to the coolness of like cool water, tranquility, peace, sleep. cool temperatures. Most Vodou sorcery, when it comes to the idea of getting work done, is some form of giving the spirit heat. I serve them to give them energy with a particular form that energy takes, because I'm asking them to use that energy to give me a project or an answer. After I get my results, there are things that I do to help cool that spirit back down. Because if they've got random heat that's unfocused, that's a big thing. Focused heat versus unfocused. Even in serving, if we're going to put food on the altar, the food has to be cooled to room temperature. Because hot food is unfocused heat. And unfocused heat hits your spiritual court and makes them all ajita, and it takes itself out on your luck. The equation is I ask what to do or how to do what I'm doing. I feed them, I give them energy, we work together, they answer me and give me the project, and then afterwards I cool them down, and any residual heat I take care of with gratitude and say thank you for doing the work for me. Most of our projects feature that cycle. There are very specific ways that the spirits take that heat, take that energy. A lot of that is unique to the nation or the rite that spirit comes from. So like Rada Loa respond very differently than Petro Loa. The protocols to ask them to do work are going to be different based on the rite and the nation of origin. Through that, different spirits, I mean, they're individuals. They have their own likes and desires. And this differs by lineage, but it's like each spirit is going to have their favorite colors, flowers they like, their favorite liqueur, foods they like, whether they like water or not, the candle color. The process of getting that spirit's attention to ask them to do a specific work involves basically lining up a whole bunch of the things that spirit likes best. If you think of them almost like a frequency on a radio, say that we're trying to reach Freda, well, the anisette liqueur, the pink headscarf, the white and pink frosting on the cakes, and the flowers and the perfume, each of those things clarify the radio station on the dial. I am better attuned to her frequency by putting a whole bunch of the things that she really likes out to get her attention and say, hey, I've got all these things for you. Why don't you come check it out and talk to me? Then there are things that, like if we're working a lamp, that's literally flame, that's fire. Targeted, there's a specific way that lamp gives her heat while I ask it and pray for it to do what I need it to. And then she, like, giving her the power to do the result. But the form the lamp takes, like last time we talked about there being that difference between like Rada lamps have water, Petrol lamps don't. Whatever the form is based on the protocols that spirit expects us to follow when we're asking them to do work.
Gotcha.
Those are the things, incidentally, like it's not that it's hidden by an initiate veil. If a priest is like, I can't tell you anything about how to do that, there's an issue. If we know who are the spirits that walk with you specifically, if we know who's in your court, it's not a hard thing to be like, dude, okay, here's how you put this together for that particular spirit so that you can do something at home. If you're having the kind of project where it's like you really need a priest to step in and intercede on your behalf, I'm still going to give you homework to do on your side while I'm doing the work for you here. So I have to teach you, what are that spirit's colors? What bottle of alcohol do you want to get? All those little offering pieces. You should know that, but you should know that about the spirits that you have.
Gotcha.
Clergy, like, we're not, I'm going to make a lot of enemies by this sentence or this statement. We're not in control of your spirits. We are a fabulous resource to be able to check against when things go wrong, to get regular readings from just to say, hey, is everything on course? There are ceremonies that if you need them done on your behalf, like mariage or la veter or kanzo, obviously clergy do that for you. But you should, as a Vodouisan, as a member of the community, you should have stuff for your spirits in your house. You should be doing things. Yeah, you might not know clearly when things are going wrong, or if something feels like it's going wrong, you might not know how to fix it. That's when you call us. hey, I've been doing this thing, it doesn't feel right. Something's going wrong, or my life's out of balance and something's weird with my altar work. What's causing it? Then a priest or a priestess can totally help you. But our job is not to do everything for you. Our job is not to render you incapable of serving your spirits. Our job is to teach you how to serve your spirits. The reason I said that was going to make a lot of enemies is there's a lot of folks that treat Vodou like an industry, where they want to take away your agency and say, well, I'm the priest, you pay me to do everything. That's kind of abusive. You should be taught how to take care of your law at home. You should have a good rapport with clergy where you could say, hey, so what should I offer? What's a good food? Hey, I did this, but I didn't do that. Is that going to be okay? Is someone so pissed at me? Like, we're advisors, but our job is to teach you the stuff that you can do. The only part and parcel is like, folks need to know. You got to get that reading. You have to find out who are the spirits you should be working with. Because if you just build an altar for so-and-so willy-nilly and they're not one that talks to you, you can annoy the one that you're talking to, and you can annoy the ones you're supposed to be talking to.
Okay, so we've reached our 10 o'clock mark. Did you have any closing thoughts before we sign out here?
Other than apologizing for what must, I mean, to me, it sounds so random. It sounds so stream of consciousness-y. It sounds like unless you have the experience to follow it, that I feel like I feel so bad for people that can't follow what I'm saying, because it's weird. It's complicated. People are absolutely welcome to get a hold of me if they have questions. Like, again, my job as a priest is to teach people how to do it and how to do it right. I am pleasantly accessible, your friendly neighborhood Houngan. So if any of this was difficult for folks to follow, or if they've got questions or stuff that's just, even if they want a reading to say, hey, how do I get started? By all means, please reach out.
Okay. Speaking of which, would you like to tell us who you are before we sign off and where they can find you?
That's right, because we didn't do my intro this time. We did it last time. My name is Matt. My initiate title and name is Bozanfe Bonungan. I am a Houngan Asogwe, which is the senior clergy rank in Haitian Vodou. Initiate child of Antiola Bomambo, aka Marie Maud Evans, in Societe Nago. We're based in Jacmel, Haiti, and Boston, Massachusetts. Yeah. Mm-hmm. If I keep going with that, it's going to be another 2 hours of just establishing who I am. But my website, as I said, for that blog is darklady.net. And there's a spot on the side. I forget if it says the blog or the ladies' musings, but it's going to bring you to the teaching blog. My email's up on there. Bozanfe, Bozanfe, Bonungan on Facebook. I'm the only one on the network. I'm incredibly easy to find. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Call me.
All right. And yeah, so thank you again for coming. It's been a pleasure and an honor as always. And I'm hoping
what I had to say made sense.
and I'm hoping that people can actually start, learning stuff like for realsies. But thank you for this wonderful information session.
Yeah.
So yes, as everyone knows, I'm Doug Graves, the Friendly Neighborhood Necromancer. You can find me on the business page on Facebook, Friendly Neighborhood Necromancer, as well as you can also find me on my YouTube channel as well, the Necropolis of Doug Graves, where you can catch our replays, as well as past live readings, so you can catch me there. So yes, thank you all for who have tuned in. Be blessed, keep safe, and we'll catch you again in the next episode. So good evening to everybody, and we'll catch you in a couple of weeks.